Should the Dodgers have interest in Max Scherzer? Is Alex Bregman even a remotely possible idea? And do any non-roster invitees have a chance at the roster? Let's get into it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. This is a daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us where you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day, and you can make that easier by subscribing to get notified when our episodes are ready or when we go live on YouTube. This is your first time listening, watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. I'm usually joined by Jeff Snyder, but Jeff is out today, so it's just me. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the team for 10 plus years now in a few different ways. We've been doing this podcast here going into year 7, and we've been Dodger fans our whole life. So we've seen a lot of Dodgers and watched a lot of Dodgers and talked a lot of Dodgers, and we're here to talk not so much about the Dodgers specifically, I guess not in the sense of the team, but what the team could potentially do or not do. We went through a weekend without any breaking news, so that was not as fun as weekends with breaking news like Roki Sasaki and Tanner Scott and all that fun stuff. But we did have Roki Sasaki press conference, we did have Tanner Scott press conference, and we've learned a lot about them, and now we're continuing to move forward. And the Dodgers did get mentioned a couple times, one in a thing that they were actually at, which is Max Scherzer, who we're going to talk about, and then one in hypothetical, which we'll talk about in the next segment. But yeah, I wanted to get started talking about Max Scherzer. It was reported that the Dodgers were in attendance at Max Scherzer throwing at a little pro day, and the Dodgers were among many teams that were there. And it says that Mets, Yankees, Dodgers, Blue Jays, Phillies, Braves, Cubs, Red Sox were among those present. Says Scherzer has been in contact with the Blue Jays, and it did say scouts liked what they saw. That's from Pat Ragazzo. Now, I guess semantics can kind of come into play here. If the Dodgers were there, does that mean they have interest? Or if the Dodgers are there, they want to see what Max Scherzer has. And then if they like that, then they have interest. I think, to me, showing up to someone throwing a pro day, that's just par for the course. Like, that's just something you do. Hey, this guy that's been a major league quality pitcher and potential future Hall of Famer is throwing, and we're gonna send a scout out to go see what he has. What if he came out throwing 102? You wouldn't want to miss that and not be there and not have that report from your scout of what it looked like. Do I think that means the Dodgers are interested in Max Scherzer? Not necessarily. I think that it's due diligence to send someone to go see a workout. They also reported to be at Tyler Matzek's throwing session, the former Braves reliever. And, that would make sense. That seems like a guy that could be a minor league deal and non-roster invitee, which we're going to talk about later as well. And that would make sense. For Max Scherzer, again, I wasn't there. We haven't heard many reports other than this report that scouts like what they saw. But, unless Max Scherzer was, pumping 101 again, I don't think the Dodgers have a need for him. I don't know how welcome it would be. We haven't heard necessarily anything negative about Max Scherzer, but, he did speak negatively about the Dodgers a little bit on his way out and kind of blamed them for his dead arm in the postseason, that ended up maybe potentially furthering along Walker Buehler's damage in his arm because he had to throw on short rest for the first time in his career. And there's a lot of different ways, and I know there's probably not a lot of strong positive feelings about Max Scherzer in his time with the Dodgers, even though he pitched very, very well in his time with the Dodgers. A ERA under 2 after getting acquired in the trade deadline. Did have the start in the wild card game where he didn't pitch particularly well, but he kept the Dodgers in the game. Or I guess he pitched well, but not particularly deep. Which is something we've kind of come accustomed to with Dodger pitchers in the postseason before this last year when we saw some guys pitch into the 7th inning. Again, there's a lot of different things with Scherzer. If the Dodgers need a starting pitcher, I would probably say they have general interest. When it comes to sending a scout to go watch someone pitch, I don't think that means they're interested. I just mean that they want to make sure that everything's checked and everything's kept tabs on. But again, let's just say for the sake of the argument, the Dodgers were interested in Max Scherzer. Would it make any sense? And I would say no, obviously, first and foremost, because he is going into his age 40 season. He hasn't, he was injured, has only threw had 9 starts last year. Was okay, had a 3.95 ERA in 43.1 innings, a FIP of 4.18, and less strikeouts than innings pitched, which is not necessarily something you're looking at when you look at Max Scherzer and the dominant guy that he used to be, or even a guy that can be good for your team. And you go back to 2023. He had a 4.01 ERA in his time with the Mets in 19 starts, gets traded to the Rangers. Did make 8 starts, had a 3.20 ERA, so he was better there, and then gets injured. And coming off injury and coming off a year where you're not as effective can go a couple different ways. Like normally the year or 2 after you have an injury is when you pitch better or you should be better. And while that might be the case, a lot of the times it's also maybe not always the case when you have a guy that is coming off injury but is also 40 years old. And for the Dodgers, the way their rotation is set up right now, again, I just think it makes a lot more sense for them to go with what they have rather than go dip their toes in the Max Scherzer water right now. I don't necessarily think that he's going to sign with the Dodgers. I think there's a lot more teams that need starting pitching that would throw maybe more money at him. Verlander got 15 mil from the Giants. Scherzer could get something in that range. And for the Dodgers, I'd rather bump it up to 20-25 mil and throw that at Jack Flaherty if we're going to go for a starting pitcher. And I think, Scherzer doesn't raise the number 5-6 spot in the rotation enough for me. Now Scherzer could sign and be legit and, look like Max Scherzer of old. And that'd be fine, but I just don't think it makes sense for that to be with the Dodgers at the moment. You have, barring all thoughts of injuries and everything else, I mean, you have Glasnow, you have Yamamoto, you have Blake Snell, you have Ohtani and Kershaw coming back at some point, along with some of those other young guys coming back at some point. You have Gonsolin, you have May, you have Knack, you have Kasperius, you have Roki Sasaki. Like there's a lot more on this roster than needs to be had from somebody like a Max Scherzer, mainly for the reasons of effectiveness and health. Getting another guy that maybe won't be healthy isn't necessarily the best thing to do. Getting someone that may be ineffective and maybe not healthy doesn't add to it. And I just don't think he matches the current state of the Dodgers. If Max Scherzer doesn't, goes unsigned somehow and it gets to June, July, and, the Dodgers have a couple, whether it's concerns or injuries or whatever the case is, and Max Scherzer was still available, I think it might be a different point of advocating for him. But at the point they sit at right now, I just don't think it makes sense. And I don't think that him the Dodgers being there in attendance means that they're interested in him. I just think that that's something you do when you run a successful ball club, is to, leave no stones unturned. And that's really what it comes down to. So no on Max Scherzer. I don't think he comes to the Dodgers anyways. I'd be very surprised and shocked if that were the case. So you don't have to freak out about Max Scherzer if you were thinking about him or freaking out about him. I don't think it's in the realm of possibility at the moment. Another one that could not be in the realm of possibility, or not even in our realm of really talking about it, is Alex Bregman. There was no reports linking the Dodgers to Alex Bregman. There was an opinion that had the two. And, when people have opinions, we like to talk about them sometimes. So that's what we're going to do. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. I'm a Raider fan, and, in my adult life, I have not had too many chances to go see the Raiders play in a playoff game. That's why in 2021, when they made it to the playoffs, I flew to Cincinnati to be there at the game. And guess what? It was a fun energy being in the city of another team that has had struggles and not a lot of postseason wins. So it was fun to be in that atmosphere. It was fun to be, on the wrong side of the fandom. And Game Time was there to help me out. Game Time got us, helped get our tickets, the ones we wanted, the ones that had a good price. And we didn't have to worry about a lot at the time because, they have their Game Time guarantee, where if you find tickets in the same section and row, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. But right now, Game Time is even better because they have Game Time Picks, which makes getting tickets for events even easier because it filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching for thousands of tickets. Plus, they have on-time ticket delivery and the lowest price guaranteed. Like I mentioned earlier, it gives you that peace of mind. So go check out Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us where we get podcasts and on YouTube. And, I say first listen of the day, but we may not be your first listen of the day. If we go live on YouTube, we might be your last listen of the day. We're not going live on YouTube for this episode, so we might be your first listen of the day. Either way, whatever listen you are, we appreciate you, and we want you to continue listening. And if you are on YouTube and you want, more Locked On Sports, you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Alex Bregman, a name that I think we've maybe mentioned a couple of times on the pod, but never really. The Dodgers don't have a need at third base. They didn't necessarily have a need at second base per se, which is somewhere that Alex Bregman has reportedly said he would be willing to play for some other teams that have been interested in him. But why would we bring up Alex Bregman? Well, there was an article on ESPN, and it was talking about bold predictions for the rest of the offseason. And David Schoenfield said Alex Bregman, his bold prediction was Alex Bregman to the Dodgers. And here's what he said. He said, why should the Dodgers stop now? If Bregman can't find the big deal he wants, the Dodgers might be a surprise fit. Max Muncy's a free agent after 2025 and prone to strikeouts. Hyson Kim's bat projects as more of a utility infielder than a starting second baseman. Bregman can shift between second and third in 2025 and then replace Muncy in 2026. Too much money even for the Dodgers? Not really. Between Max Muncy, Chris Taylor, Michael Conforto, and Miguel Rojas, the Dodgers have $49.5 million coming off the books after this season. And then in parentheses, the pitching staff is set for years. Now, when it's laid out this way, it does make some sense. But what's not laid out in here is what type of deal that would be. And I think that's one of the bigger questions other than direct fit. Now, there's a couple things, obviously, that come with Alex Bregman. And one of those is he was on the 2017 team, that cheated the Dodgers out of a World Series. And again, we talked ourselves into Carlos Correa when he was a free agent and even this year for a potential trade. And, I had been on board with it. Bregman, it's just a matter of personal preference. You might not want any Astros on the Dodgers ever. You might not want specific ones, whatever the case is. I particularly just don't have strong feelings about Alex Bregman in positive manner. Like I don't know, for whatever reason, whatever it is, it's the smug look. It's something that I don't like about Alex Bregman. So one, me personally, I wouldn't want Bregman on the Dodgers for that. I guess that reason at the moment. But it's easy to say that when he's had declining numbers and you don't necessarily know what you're going to get from Alex Bregman. The last 3 years, his OPS and OPS plus have declined. Even in 2021, he was hurt, so I guess you can give him a little bit of a pass there. But had a 777 OPS in that year, 768 last year. He is still very good defensively, but like I said, the Dodgers don't have a need at third base. They could play him there. They could play him at second base, and yeah, it would give the Dodgers another legitimate, above average offensive player. Regardless of the declining stats, he's still above average offensively. The 118 WRC plus last year. His strikeout rate is very, very low. Schoenfield mentions the strikeouts for Muncy. Even with Bregman having a higher percentage than he had the last 3 seasons, his strikeout percentage still sits at 13.6%, which is very, very, very low. You look down at Baseball Savant and check out the Alex Bregman page, and you see, a lot of mediocre things or mid-tier, 52%, 66%, 59, 51, all that type of stuff. Barrel percentage down to 34, hard hit percentage in the 51st percentile, bat speed in the 41st percentile, which we know is indicative of, being able to maintain at least exit velocity and barrel percentage, all that type of stuff. You look at the squared up percentage, he does square the ball up. That's in the 96th percentile. And then it's everything that we talked about in terms of not swinging and missing and not striking out. 98% percentile on whiff percentage, which means he doesn't swing and miss very often. 82nd percentile on chase percentage. He's not chasing, out of the zone too much. And then 94th percentile on the strikeout percentage because he still doesn't strike out a lot, which is very, very good. Now, that would fit the profile for the Dodgers for the most part. Well, I guess it wouldn't particularly match profile depending on, which Dodgers you're specifically looking at. They have gone high power, high strikeout percentage in the past. They have gone more contact, lower strikeout percentage in certain areas. And I do think that's something that they've maybe shifted focus to a little bit more, not necessarily fully. But, when you have Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani, those are 3 legitimate hitters. So, they're not striking out a ton, but that can kind of skew a little bit of what you're necessarily looking for. Max Muncy's still there. He does strike out a lot. They've had other guys that do strike out a lot, and they have guys that haven't struck out a lot. It just kind of depends. But I do feel like Bregman's hitting profile matches an ideal world of what the Dodgers want. He does bring a little bit of power. He does not strike out a lot, and he does have good defense. Like it makes sense when you look at it that way. But also, 30 years old, turning 31 this season, and you don't always know when guys' decline started. Has Bregman's decline started, or is it, he's still young enough to recover from, the numbers decline from the last few years. And again, when you look at the swing speed or bat speed, that's kind of where you're like, okay, I don't know if this is going to be something he can fix. But again, he's still above average offensively. But ultimately, again, this is not a rumor anyway, so it's not something that we have to think like, oh, should the Dodgers do this or not? I don't think it's on the table at all. But the case that was laid out did make me think about it in a different way that I didn't think about before when it comes to, Max Muncy getting older and also being last year of his contract. And, the Dodgers could move him to second base if and play him at third base if Muncy starts struggling against lefties or whatever the case is. And yeah, it does make sense. But again, without any dollar figures behind that, it's hard to really get on board. If it's a, 3-year, $60 million deal, then you kind of have to take that's just good value. But if it's, 5-6 year deal for anything above $20 million a year, then you probably think that's not something the Dodgers should get into. And again, it not being a rumor means that there isn't any figures out there to really say other than what he's been offered by other teams. And at the Wolves Astros offer 5 years, 168 mil or something like that. Like, no, I don't think the Dodgers are in it on that. They'd be in it if, again, 4 years, $15-20 million a year. If they could get that type of deal, then yeah, you jump in and you say, hey, maybe we are interested. But realistically, I would imagine, Bregman's been linked to the Red Sox, and if that deal was going to get done, it would have been done already. I do think with the Astros clearing up money for Ryan Presley, I ultimately think he's going to go back there, and that's where he belongs. So let him stay in Astro for his entire career, and we don't have to worry about having any inner dilemmas of this guy cheated the Dodgers out of World Series, but he could help them win one now. We don't have to worry about that. So no on Bregman unless there was insane value on a contract that they could get. And then, at that point, you could be upset about it as a fan, but at that point it would make sense, value-wise. So the Dodgers announced their non-roster invitees in a year that doesn't seem to have a lot of chance for some random guy to make the team. Is there any chance for any random guy to make the team? We'll talk about it. So make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers. Thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, an everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. We appreciate you if you are already an everydayer. And if you're not one, we still appreciate you for listening today. And we ask that you up your intake of Locked On Dodgers by one episode a week. And, if you up that to one goes to two goes to three goes to four goes to 5. And maybe you might like it. And maybe you want to keep listening or, join our live sessions or become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers to get text directly from us, keeping you up to date with the Dodgers, and to get an invite to our exclusive Discord server where you can talk Dodger baseball and other things with other Dodger insiders. So go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. All right, so enough about hypotheticals of players the Dodgers are probably not going to get. Let's talk about players that at least will be in spring training with the Dodgers to start the year. The Dodgers announced their non-roster invitees for spring training. I'll go through all of them, and then we'll talk about if any have a chance to make the opening day roster. So you have pitchers. You have Sam Carlson, Carlos Duran, Julian Fernandez, Jackson Ferris, Giovanni Gallegos, Jose Hernandez, Joe Jaquez, Justin Jarvis, Jared Karros, Jack Little, Jose Rodriguez, Roki Sasaki because he's signed to a minor league deal, so he's still a non-roster invitee at the moment, and Matt Sauer. You have catchers, Griffin Lockwood Powell, Chris Oakey, and then Dalton Rushing. Infielders, you have David Bodie, Alex Freeland, and Austin Gauthier, and Cody Hosey. And then in the outfield, you have Justin Dean, Josue DePaula, Zaire Hope, and Ryan Ward. Let's go the easy route. Catcher, Griffin Lockwood Powell, no chance of making the opening day roster without significant injuries or things of that nature happening. Chris Oakey, no chance of making the opening day roster. Same reasons as above. Dalton Rushing has a chance to make the opening day roster if there is an injury. I don't think even the most insane spring training run would get Dalton Rushing to start the year on the opening day roster, but I do think it would, have the Dodgers thinking about, okay, what can we do to move stuff around to get Dalton Rushing some at-bats. We go to the infield. David Bodie, no chance of making the opening day roster unless injuries happen. Alex Freeland, same thing, but he's there mostly to learn. He's a guy that probably will make an appearance in the majors this year at some point, just because he plays premium position at shortstop, and you never know what's going to happen at shortstop, and there could be injuries and all that nature. So Austin Gauthier is definitely a guy I could see not making the opening day roster, but at least appearing at some point this season. Again, just a guy who can fill in. He plays the infield. He does play the outfield a little bit. A guy that could fill in if there was injuries. Cody Hosey, no chance at opening day roster. Potential chance at seeing him play for the Dodgers this year. Again, injury based. And then you go to the outfield. Justin Dean, no chance at opening day roster. Never heard that name before. Ryan Ward, a name we have heard. He's been with the Dodgers for a little bit. No chance at the opening day roster, barring injury. Yes, chance at making the roster at some point this year, if they need, a guy to come up and play if there's injuries. Josue De Paul is Zaire Hope. No chance at opening day roster, but it's going to be fun to see them, being in the big league camp, learning from, Mookie Betts and guys like that, and, getting some ABs in some of these spring games. That'll be fun to see those two guys, both 20 years old, both top 100 prospects on a couple lists now, and both guys that we should be excited for as Dodger fans for sure. Now, going to the pitchers, Hiroki Sasaki obviously has a chance and more than likely will be on the opening day roster, because that's, he signed a minor league deal only because those were the technical rules of the deal that he signed. And in the moment, it helps the Dodgers right now because they have a full 40-man roster. So that's what makes sense for Hiroki. But look at some of these other names: Matt Sauer, Jack Little, Justin Jarvis, Joe Jaquez, Jose Hernandez, Julian Fernandez, Sam Carlson. Maybe not Carlson. Maybe Carlson. Those are all guys that are in their mid to late 20s. Some of them have been prospects with the team. Most of them are minor league free agents that signed this offseason and will be pitching for the OKC Comets this year. And a couple of those names that I mentioned, you could see in the majors at some point, whether with the Dodgers or someone else, but not really someone that's going to factor into opening day roster. You look at guys like Jared Karros and Jackson Ferris specifically, and Carlos Duran, guys that are young. It's good to see them in big league camp. Good for them to talk to all the variety of pitchers that the Dodgers have, but really no chance at opening day roster, but definitely a chance of seeing one of those guys at some point this season, the way the Dodgers have ran through pitchers the last couple of years. Sam Carlson's an interesting one. He's a minor league free agent. He's a name that some people may recognize. He's an interesting arm, intriguing arm for sure. A guy that, you can look on social media and find some of his latest stuff and latest, numbers in terms of velocity and movement and all that type of stuff. Somebody that we definitely could see at some point, but not really opening day roster type stuff. That leaves one name, really. Giovanni Gallegos. He's pitched in the majors before. He's 33 years old. Realistically, the way the Dodgers are set up right now, they have a full roster. They have starting pitching. They have a full bullpen with what's currently on the 40-man roster. But a guy like Gallegos, who has pitched in the majors before, has had success, could be a guy that sneaks his way onto an opening day roster. Somebody gets 2 weeks into camp, has a groin injury, and they're not going to be out that long, but they're not going to be ready for opening day. Somebody else's arm hasn't quite caught up with them or hasn't reacted the way they want to getting into camp. They're going to miss, a couple weeks into the season. Now you're down a couple guys. If two very realistic things happen, hey, Giovanni Gallegos could slide his way onto a roster. I think the Dodgers do have, a lot of pitching, but you can never have enough pitching. And he's a name that is somebody that's looking to play in the majors. Some of these guys know they'll play in the majors at some point, but he's a guy that he's fighting for a spot in the majors, or at least wants to, maybe what they want to learn from the Dodgers. Like, there's different ways of there's different reasons for signing with the Dodgers. One could be you think you have a legitimate chance of making the roster, and obviously you're going to be on a roster that will compete for a World Series, or you think, hey, you know what, I can go. These guys might show me a few things, help me out, and even if I don't make it with them, I could make it somewhere else because of what I learned from them and, me using that. So it's one of those where you can go to a team that's not good and probably make the opening day roster, but not necessarily get better, and you're just kind of stuck in purgatory. Or you could try a chance at going to the Dodgers and probably not have a chance at making the opening day roster, but have a chance at learning something and becoming an asset that other teams might want. So I think that's kind of where Gallegos sits. But I want to say that this is probably going to be the least competitive camp the Dodgers have had for a while. There's not necessarily anyone fighting for roster spots, at least from non-roster invitees. Obviously, on the 40-man, there's going to be guys fighting for spots. Bullpen arms, starting arms, like, May, Gonsolin, Kasperius, Knack, like one or two of those guys could be in the rotation to start the season. And Bobby Miller, like one or two of those guys could be in the rotation to start the season. And, they're going to battle for that in camp. If one of those two of those guys doesn't make, the starting rotation, but the Dodgers feel like they could be a valuable asset out of the pen, they could be a pen guy. So there's going to be competition for the 26-man roster. I don't think there's going to be much competition for the 40-man roster. And, that's probably, well, not probably, that is something that's pretty good, like pretty great to say. It's always fun to see which young prospect is going to have a great spring and try to fight his way onto the roster. Or, a guy, Brandon Morrow back in the day, he didn't make the opening day roster. He obviously, got called up a little bit later, but he was a guy that impressed early on, and the Dodgers kept him and, had to make a decision at some point and brought him up, and, that's the way it went. So there won't be as much of that as it may be in years past. It's not a bad thing. The Dodgers roster is pretty set right now, and that's something that's fun to think about. And, we'll see a lot of these guys in spring, and we'll see if anybody catches an eye, or if there are injuries, then the Dodgers will have to make something move. So we shall see. But, either way, having the non-roster invitees, we're a few days away from February, which means Dodgers pitchers and catchers and full team workouts and all that type of stuff will start this month. Games will start that month. So let's get to February. Let's get to spring training. Let's get to Japan. Let's get to the regular season. And, it should all be a fun ride from there. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today or Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast, come on Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us, keeping you up to date on the Dodgers. You can follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Cherish my advice, play podcasts, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.